14.2 milligalloway. Client 1. My client profile / consultation. This client is male and 16 years of age. His diet is generally okay. He consumes and eats a full 3 meals. The diet is all-inclusive, so he should receive a wide range of essential vitamins and minerals. However, there are concerns about snacking on unhealthy foods regularly, and there have been previous issues of dehydration. The client doesn't suffer with a heart condition, although a member of his family suffers with Wolff-Parkinson-White. He suffers with an ongoing back injury and has a family member with asthma. The client receives a healthy amount of exercise spread throughout the day. They have a part-time job. He works 8 hours a week alongside college. He describes himself as being happy and enjoying life, but he struggles with stress and violence. He does not get the recommended amount of sleep, but he blames technology for keeping him awake. My client has stated they do not like plyometric training and activities that primarily involve his back, as he suffers from back pain. However, he enjoys running, cycling and swimming. My client wants to improve his muscular endurance, mainly, but also his cardiovascular endurance. Client 1's 3 targets. My client would like to improve their muscular endurance. Their current endurance is average with his score being 70. After week 3, I want his score to be above 100, therefore getting a good score. After week 6, I want his score to reach an excellent level. My client would like to improve their cardiovascular endurance because they got a 1.5 mile result of 12.5 minutes, putting them in a fair category against normative data. After 3 weeks, I want him to have dropped his time by 30 seconds. After 6 weeks, I want to have dropped his time by 45 seconds. My client would also like to improve their power so that he can jump and bound higher to catch balls in the air in his sport cricket. After 3 weeks, my client wants to improve their vertical jump by 3 centimeters. After 6 weeks, my client wants to improve their vertical jump by 6 centimeters. This is the start of my client's exercise program. On week 1, Monday, we would start with a warm-up with the client. The client needs to participate in a warm-up because they need to adjust to the demands of exercise. In the warm-up on Monday, we would start with a period of running between cones. At every cone, you need to touch the cones. Because my client plays cricket regularly, the client bends down at speed to pick up rolling balls when fielding. Therefore, adding the cones that cause the client to bend down can improve the performance in the game. After the first stage of the warm-up, that would last approximately 5 minutes, so it provides an adequate pulse raiser to get the blood flowing around the body at a rate which is appropriate for exercise, we would then have to move on to stretches that target the relevant muscle groups in order for them to become more pliable. On Monday's session of week 1, my client will be on a rowing machine, therefore the stretches would need to be focused on the legs mainly, where the largest amount of stress is exerted. Therefore, I would set cones 10 meters apart. We would do dynamic stretches between them. On Monday, we would start with walking lunges over the 10 meters, ensuring the knee does not go in front of the toes. It may be an idea that when doing the lunges to encourage the client to add a twist in the lunge, as it would target the core. The core is used when rowing due to the body positions that the client will uphold on the machine. We would then move on to heel flicks and high knees that focus on the quads and hamstrings, which will be highly targeted on a rowing machine. The session would last 20 minutes, and every 5 minutes there would be a break of 2 minutes so that the athlete can recover. The reason that we are using a rowing machine is because my client said they want to work on their muscular endurance. The rowing machine provides that, as it is continual muscular contraction in the same body area. The rowing machine will target mainly my client's quadriceps and hamstrings. This would benefit the performer because the performer during the client's cricket game will have to do repeated contractions with the action of running throughout the game. I want the client to be working in their aerobic training zone, which is 60 to 80% of his maximum heart rate. This is because I do not want him working in his anaerobic training zone, as it's too long of a time to be working anaerobically. My client would do this session on a Monday evening, as he is free at this time but cannot do it during the day as he has college. It is important to remember that my client must complete a cool-down after their sessions. The cool-down should work over 10 meters. In the cool-down, my client will do a jog across 10 meters forward to the line and then jog back. This section should last 2 minutes, but should only be a slow jog in this section. I will speak to my client about their first session and ask how he found it. Once the client has completed the jog, the client will need to complete stretches. As my client is a sports student, I would let them choose the first stretch. However, I would want my client to do a series of dynamic stretches such as lunges, heel flicks, and high knees and hamstring stretches. These would be done over the 10-meter stretch. These stretches must be held for 3 seconds. I would then move on to doing some static stretches such as straddle reaches and pipe reaches. These are held for 10 seconds approximately. These stretches just keep my client's muscles pliable. These stretches can be done on the floor. My client must not bounce when they have these stretches, as this could cause injury. On Tuesday, I wouldn't run a session because he has rugby training in the morning. Therefore, I wouldn't want to overload him on this day when he is already doing exercise. On Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, my client would have rest days for multiple reasons. He works on Wednesdays and Fridays and has 4 days of college. Therefore, I would not advise to run sessions on these days. This is also week 1, and I do not want to put my client off and make them think they have no freedom, and that is too intense on week 1. On Sunday, because my client wants to be active and they want to work on their cardiovascular endurance, I'm going to instruct my client to go on a run. My warm-up for my client on this day would be a 5-minute speed walk. During the speed walk, I will have a whistle. Different number of blows on the whistle will mean different actions should occur. For example, 1 whistle means jump, 2 whistles means long barrier, and 3 whistles means a bound. In the warm-up today is when I can add a little more focus onto power, which is something that my client wanted to work on. The jumping and bounding in this warm-up would work on power. They would then work on some PNF stretches, focusing mainly on his leg. An example being I push the client's leg upwards whilst they are laying on their back. They would then do a 35-minute continuous jog, where they would be working in their aerobic training zone, due to the amount of time they are working for being too long for them to be working anaerobically. Also, working aerobically for prolonged periods of time will improve his cardiovascular endurance, which is one of his targets. He needs a good level of cardiovascular endurance to cope with the amount of time that he will be performing for in his games. After this jog, my client needs to do an effective cool-down. In this cool-down, I will set out hurdles over 10 meters. I will get my client to work over this 10-meter stretch. They would start by jogging in and out of the hurdles and then running back to the start. They would then jump the hurdles for 10 meters and then run back. He would continue this circuit of jogging and bounding for a couple of minutes. We would then do some stretches together. I would do PNF stretches with my client, and then we would do the hamstring stretch, where you push your shoulder against the client's leg whilst they lay flat on their back. They would do a stretch on their quadricep, where I hold their leg against their rear whilst the instructor holds their leg in this position. We would then do straddle, where the instructor moves the client's feet outwards with their own feet. It is important that these stretches are held for 3 seconds, and then the stretch is released and done again. These stretches would all be done 5 times. It is important that communication is key during PNF stretches, as the instructor is the one controlling how far the stretch goes. Therefore, communication must stay primary. Week 2. On the Monday of week 2, my client will have a rest day because the day prior, so Sunday of week 1, he went on a run. Therefore, I wouldn't want him to have a hard training session the day after, as it may demotivate him and put him off the training program entirely. On the Tuesday, I will not put any training session because he has a rugby training session that day, and would not want him to have another bout of exercise on this day, as it may tire him and he would not be able to work as hard. On Wednesday, I would not expect my client to do a session as they have a full day of college and then work in the evening. Therefore, my first session to be completed this week would be on a Thursday. I would start with a warm-up. I would get my clients to do the T-bar exercise, where he runs forward, side steps in both directions, and then does some backward running. This will need to be done for an adequate amount of time, as it needs to raise the athlete's pulse. The changes in direction are appropriate for my client as well, as he needs to change direction in his cricket games when the ball is hit and he has to react to it. He would then do some dynamic stretches over a 10-meter stretch of ground. We would start with walking lunges over the 10 meters, ensuring the knee does not go over the toes. It may be an idea when doing the lunges to encourage the client to add a twist in the lunges. It would target the core. We would then move on to heel flicks and high knees that focus on the quads and hamstrings. We would then move on to a mini circuit with sandbags and weights to improve muscular endurance. We would start with a period of 2-minute squats with a sandbag over his shoulder. However, my client sometimes says he suffers with back pain. If he feels this occurring, we can remove the sandbag and just do squats for 3 minutes instead, as it will be testing his muscular endurance still. We would then move on to lunges with the sandbag. Once in the lunge position, the bag would be swung parallel to the body. This action will help with the back swing that is used in the cricket game, as it is testing the same muscles, and the repeated lunges will test the athlete's muscular endurance, which is just what he wanted to focus on. I would repeat this activity 30 times on each leg. Because we have been mainly targeting the legs in this little circuit, I would add bicep curls for 2 minutes, just so that my client's legs can have a rest and he can improve muscular endurance in the arms, which will be needed if he bats for a long time in cricket games, as the action is repetitive and the bats are sometimes heavy. On Saturday, my client would go for another run. I would advise this run is done on grass on similar terrain to what he would play cricket on, to improve his cardiovascular endurance. It would be performed at low intensity in his aerobic training zone, which is 60 to 80% of his maximum heart rate. If he walks, he would probably have to increase the duration to warm up for this. I want my client to do a brisk walk for 30 seconds, then side step for 30 seconds, and then finally hopping for 30 seconds. I want this to be done on a loop for 5 minutes. In total, hopping would help with power, which is something my client wanted to work on. The cool down after the run should consist of the same 5-minute brisk walk, side steps, and hopping that were done in the warm-up, then followed by some static stretches. Pike reach held for 10 seconds, the temple stretch where the feet are placed together and the legs are pressed downwards until the knees are as close to the floor as possible. This should also be held for 10 seconds. Finally, a stretch in the upper body would be done as it is still under strain whilst running. The plus stretch would be done where the arms are crossed across the body and held for 10 seconds. On the other days of the week, as he has full college days and other commitments, therefore I cannot add a session, and it is only week 2, so I don't want to overload the performer and make him feel like he has no freedom. Week 3. This week on the Monday, I want to revisit the rowing machine and see if we can increase the intensity to progress my client. So on Monday evening, I would get him to participate in a warm-up. His warm-up could be casual shuttle runs. After every run, he has to bounce a tennis ball off the wall and catch the ball in the opposite hand, therefore improving his coordination, which is good as that is needed in his sport, which is cricket, because he may have to catch the ball in either hand. After the shuttle runs have raised his pulse, he would then need to do stretches again. I would set out the 10-meter cones, which he would work between. We would do dynamic lunges, heel flicks, and high knees because they are relevant to the rowing machine. He would then get onto the rowing machine, and I'd want him to work aerobically for 40 minutes, and every 10 minutes he would do a 2-minute break. This is quite a large step up from the first set on the rowing machine in week 1, so if my client believes they reach 19 on the RPE scale before the 30th minute, they can stop at minute 30. He would do this on Monday evenings because he has not done exercise on the Sunday of last week, and he does not work on a Monday. On Tuesday, I will not put any training session because he still has rugby training in the morning that day, and would not want him to overload and have another bout of exercise on this day as it may tire him and he would not be able to work as hard. On Wednesday, my client is going to do a small circuit. As a warm-up, we will do 20-meter jogs as this replicates the distance that needs to be run in a cricket game between the wickets. The circuit would consist of activities such as a wall sit, high knees, and jumping jacks, as the regular muscular contractions will improve his endurance, which is one of his targets. There would also be a rest station so the performer can recover. I also have included punching bags, as the regular stress being applied to the legs would be strenuous. Therefore, I would add a station where muscular endurance is improved in the arms, so that there is improved muscular endurance but not overload on the client's legs. The stations would last a minute and a half, so the client feels the effect and progression from the previous levels. At every station, I want my client to be working as hard as possible, so they will be using their anaerobic training zone, which is above 80% of their maximum heart rate. Even though one of my client's targets was to improve cardiovascular endurance, which will only be tested in the aerobic zone, I think it is important he works anaerobically, as when a cricketer is batting, they may be working in their anaerobic training zone. On Thursday and Friday, my client will have rest days because they have 4 days of college, whilst Friday having work also making it inappropriate for the client to do exercise on these days. On Saturday, I want my client to do a spinning class. This spinning class would be appropriate as it improves muscular endurance and cardiovascular endurance, which are 2 of his targets. The session would last an hour. He would work in his aerobic training zone, which is 60 to 80% of his heart rate. We would monitor this by watching his heart rate. A warm-up would need to be done before. My client will get on the exercise bike so that the muscles targeted in the session are warmed up in the warm-up. My client would work at 10 on the RPE scale during the warm-up. I would check he was around this point every minute. The warm-up would last 5 minutes. Whilst working on the bike, he could do alternate hand tosses with a tennis ball against the wall of the gym, so that the warm-up is more relevant to the sport he plays, cricket. After the spinning class, my client would have to cool down. He would stay on the bike and reduce his intensity down to 10 on the RPE scale like in the warm-up. My client would alternate 30 seconds from sitting down cycling to standing up cycling for the 5 minutes. In the cool down, we would conduct some stretches to maintain the muscle pliability. After cycling, I want my client to assume tabletop position and the legs alternately be lowered and raised without touching the floor. Then V-sit would be another option for my client where the legs are held upwards. If my client pulls the legs upwards and holds it, the stretch will be felt in the lower leg, which will have been tested on the exercise bike. During the spinning session, music will be played for interest, and he'll be working in his aerobic zone, which is 60 to 80% of his heart rate. On Sunday, he would have a rest day as he will have worked hard the day before at the spinning class, and I do not want to overload his weekly timetable, therefore I would not run a session on this day.